And a great pleasure to welcome on our Talk Across America show tonight. A good friend of us who we met several years ago down here in Sarasota where we broadcast from. He came into our radio station where we were at the time, and he was doing some work at a local theater down here, the Golden Apple Dinner Theater, as a director. And you've seen him on TV, but also you've seen a lot of his work on television. He's been a director of such shows as Everybody Loves Raymond, Scrubs, Reba, Family Ties, Dartman and Greg, but also as an actor on many shows. And you probably know him best if you remember the old Bob Newhart Show. He was the husband of the secretary, Carol, and we're going to talk a little bit about Will's career tonight and reminisce a little bit. And Will Mackenzie joined us tonight from out in L.A. in California on the telephone. And Will, as we talked about before we went on, it's good to talk to you again. We met about 10, 12 years ago at the local station here in Sarasota when you were doing some work at the Golden Apple Dinner Theater. So good to talk to you again.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Doug. I'm flattered to be called. I haven't done an interview in a couple of years because I've been retired for, at least 7 years now, and I just turned 80 this summer.
Yeah, congratulations.
So it was a big occasion. But anyway, you're very kind to call and remember those. We had very happy days down in Sarasota at the Golden Apple Dinner Theater that the tour-offs were running at the time.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I always like to look through, the archives and say, I'd love to talk to Will again. And excuse me, and you were directing. I forget now what was the play you were directing there at the time? Do you remember which one it was?
Well, I don't know. I did one play every year, a musical. They did nothing
while, right?
but musicals, and I think the last musical I did there was Sweet Charity, I think.
Okay.
But I did Anything Goes and. Well, geez, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and Kiss Me Kate, and Wonderful Town, and I just had it was wonderful because my wife and I both come out of the theater. We met. She was a dancer, and I was an actor singer in New York, and we loved theater. But I ended up coming out to California for various reasons, and got on that Bob Newhart Show, and there was just a lot more work in TV, so I did a lot more television, but I always had a first love for theater. And so Bob offered me a chance to come down once a year and direct a musical. So every year, he'd call ahead and say, well, what do you think? What do you want to do? And I'd do something. And it was always a show that really I loved and had always wanted to direct and stuff. So anyway, we had a great time, and my wife came down too, Patsy, and helped me a lot. So that was great.
Yeah, we got to meet your wife when she came in the studio a couple of times when you were on, I believe, a friend of our Cliff show, and we had a chance to talk to you. So yes, you both met in the theater. That's great.
We did. We actually did a children's show. That's where we first met. She had been assisting Tommy Toon in Milwaukee in summer theater. And then the director, Jay Harnick, Sheldon Harnick's brother, was directing a children's show that I was in, Young Tom Jefferson, and they'd lost the lead, the girl, and, the children's shows didn't pay much, so people kept leaving. And so then Patsy came along, and bam! We've been married 52 years now, Doug. 52 years.
That's for show business. That's unbelievable.
For any business.
That's right.
For any business. She is a very tolerant, lovable, wonderful woman, and still is. She just had her 75th birthday, and she's a dancer. She did a lot of Broadway shows, but she still dances. She takes a dance class from Louis Van Amstel, who used to be on Dancing with the Stars, and then she studies with other, her friend teaches tap dancing, and then she takes a light Broadway jazz class. So she is, once you're a dancer, I don't know if you know any dancers, but when they've got it in their system, they're going to go out with their boots on.
Yeah, they keep going, right? Yeah.
Oh, boy, and she does. She keeps me going.
Well, speaking of Broadway, and you worked, I believe, weren't you in the original Hello, Dolly?
I was.
Just closed on Broadway.
I can't say I created the part. I was in the original production. I took Charles Nelson Riley's place as Cornelius Hackle, and I was in I was in a musical called Half a Sixpence with Tommy Steele before that, and Gower Champion came across the street and saw me in this thing, and Charlie Riley was leaving, and I had a nice part in Half a Sixpence, but it was a small part, and gosh, Hello Dolly was humongous. I mean, it was it was like Hamilton. I mean, it was a big hit in those days, and so I got hired to, and they let me leave. They got me out of my contract and Half a Sixpence, and I went across the street and did Hello Dolly for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
I did it with Carol, and Ginger Rogers, and Betty Grable came in, and Martha Ray, and and then the Black Company came in. Pearl Bailey.
Pearl Bailey did it, right? I remember.
Pearl Bailey came in, so unfortunately I had to leave. But anyway, and then my wife ended up doing it later with Ethel Merman.
Oh, really?
She came into it after Pearl Bailey closed in it, and Phyllis Diller did it for a while, and then Patsy got a chance to go in and play Ermengarde in the production with Ethel Merman, which was really exciting because I think he actually wrote it for Ethel Merman, and she didn't want to do it at the time. She just finished doing Gypsy and said, no, this isn't for me. And so she turned it down, and Mary Martin turned it down, and so Carol Channing got to do it. And of course, Ethel and Mary Martin all ended up playing it eventually because they realized what a great part it was. It was a great show.
I guess Carol probably played it the most. Carol Channing we're talking about.
Oh, my God.
She must have played it about, 8,000 times around the country?
And she did it many different productions. She did it. I mean, I think she's still alive. I think
she's in her mid-90s.
Got to be in her in her 90s somewhere. I think she's alive down in Palm Springs. But she did a couple of revivals of it.
I saw one in Long Island years later. But
she did one in L.A. that a whole bunch of us from New York had done it 20 years before. A group of us got together and we sat up in the balcony and saw Carol do it again. And it was the same performance. She looked exactly the same, but she was fabulous in that part. She just was absolutely great. I just saw. Well, Patsy and I saw Bette Midler about a year ago.
I was going to say, did you see the new one? You did see Bette Midler.
Oh, yeah. She was fabulous. She was the most like Ruth Gordon. It was written originally for as a matchmaker, Thornton Wilder, and Ruth Gordon I saw with Bobby Morris and Arthur Hill, and who else was in that? Anyway, Bette Midler was a lot like Ruth Gordon, a little short and busybody, and that Bette Midler walk and the way she can talk and dance and sing. She was absolutely great. It was a great production, too.
I don't know if it closed because Bette Midler didn't want to do it anymore, because it seemed to be still selling out.
I think so, yeah. And then what's her name, Bernadette came in, and that did well. But I think she didn't want to. After a while, the ladies are getting older, as we all are, and I think Bette's in her 71 or 2, and I was as a librarian for a while here at school, and Bette's daughter went to school at that same school, and Bette's got to be in her early 70s, and it's hard. I got very close to Reba McEntire because I did that show for five years, and Reba did Annie Gets Your Gun.
Right, Annie Gets Your Gun.
But anybody doing 8 shows a week, it is tough, and Reba then was a spring chicken, Reba. But I can't imagine when you're in your 70s doing a Broadway show night after night.
I was going to ask, I like when people do Broadway shows, and like you said, 8 a week, there's got to be a day where you decide, I just don't want to do it, even if it's a happy show. It's got to be tough, right?
It depends on your situation. My friend David Cryer, John Cryer's father, David was in Phantom of the Opera for, I think, 25, 26 years.
Wow.
He was on the road for a while, then he got on the Broadway company, and he just loved the fact that he had a steady job. He had several kids. He was putting them through college, and, depending on all of your circumstances and stuff, you just bite the bullet and do it. And you just know, I did my show. I did Dolly 2.5 years. I did actually 941 performances. I counted at the end. And, there are many nights you just don't feel like doing it. But, you always have to just think, hey, these people paid their, whatever, in those days, paid their $15 or something like that to see it. Now they pay, they pay $600-$700 to see Hamilton.
$1,500 maybe for some shows, right?
Is it really? God,
Hamilton was like $1,000 or $1,500, I heard.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
But
well, I asked Patti LuPone that. Patti LuPone was on us a few years ago when she was down, and she said sometimes you just have to rely on, like she called it Dr. Broadway. You just automatically, once you get on stage, you feel better, right?
Pat, my wife said that Ethel Merman had a theory that you never sink below this certain level. You can go above it when, you feel everything is just fantastic, but, our lives aren't like that. And so, but 8 times a week, you've got to get out there and do it.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, then you should get out. It's just, you owe it to the audience. I mean, you can't just walk through the show and not be at least pretending to have that kind of excitement.
I would think at least a musical would probably be easier than a straight play, because at least the music can kind of carry along.
A musical is, depending, I'm not sure I'd want to do Beauty and the Beast and have to put on the Beast stuff every time, but still, the Phantom does that and puts all that stuff on and everything, but doing Dolly was a joy because it's a happy show.
Yeah.
It's a happy show, and the music is terrific. And even if it's the same overture every single night, it's music, and it's great. So I agree. I would rather do that. Yeah. But that's my personal choice. I love musicals. I was in some plays, and I always preferred being in the musicals if I could.
Talking with Bill Mackenzie tonight on the program, and now you did the theater. You went out to L.A. Was the Bob Newhart Show the first show you did out there in television?
I'd done a couple of guest shots. We'd come out here on the tour of Promises, and we did a tour of Apple Tree, and I got an agent out here, and I came back and kind of checked on a few things and got guest shots on. I don't know, it was on Mod Squad and on That Girl and on, this and that. And I got a name. And then I was actually at an audition in New York, and somebody said they're auditioning for this sort of semi-regular part in Bob Newhart Show. And if you can get yourself out there, you have a very good chance of getting that job. This was a casting office telling me this. So I jumped on a plane and I got off, and I actually went straight to the audition. I was staying with some friends actually, and I said my audition is at 4:00, so I'm going straight to the audition. It went there, and by the time I got back to their house, my agent had called that they took you on the show. So it was very exciting, and I did about 10 episodes of that, playing, as you said, Carol Kester Bondra. I played Larry Bondra.
You were a travel agent, right? Wasn't a travel agent?
I was a travel agent. You did your homework.
Oh, I watched the Newhart Show
growing up. You did my IMDb very well, actually. No, you did great. You mentioned all the successes, and you didn't mention too many of the failures. So,
you haven't had many of those.
I had a wonderful time. I was on that off and on for 2.5 years, and as I had said to you before we went on, Bob Newhart was really responsible for my getting my first TV directing job, because his joke is always because he thought I did a really good job. And he said to me, well, I think you can be more help to us behind the camera. So I'm not sure if that was a kind of a insult of saying your days in front of the camera are over, why don't you direct? But in any case, that was the last time I performed, was doing that, and I got really busy doing television. And man, I was so lucky. MTM and Grant Tinker were my home base, basically. They hired me to do lots of series, especially WKRP in Cincinnati.
Oh, sure.
That's the first show I did for maybe 3 or 4 years. Yeah, for a long time.
I was going to say, how do most people become directors of television shows? There's no school for that necessarily, unless you're an actor. How do you get into that? You have to ask, right? If you're an actor, can I do it?
You have to ask.
Yeah.
Actually, I had directed a woman who was in Hello, Dolly with me, who'd taken Eileen Brennan's place, and she'd gotten on the Bob Newhart Show before me, and I had directed her in a couple of musicals back in New Jersey. And she, without my knowing it, had gone to Grant Tinker and said, this actor you just hired is a really good director of stage. You might want to look at him. And I get this call to go to Grant Tinker's office, and I think I'm being fired, obviously, as an actor. And he said, Pat Finley says you direct. Have you directed any television? I said, no, I just direct stage musicals. And would you like to direct television? Yes, God, yes. So he put me in an editing room with a wonderful editor, and about 6 months after being with the editor and observing on the show and watching Jimmy Burrows and Peter Bonners and all the other directors they had, one day I got a call just saying, we don't have a director for next week. All the regulars are, do you think you're ready? This is the line producer calling me. And I said, yeah. I mean, I wasn't ready, but, when are you ever ready?
That's right.
When were you ready to do your first radio show? You
just do it.
You do it. Right. You're passionate about it, and by God, and also I'd been on the show as an actor, several episodes, and Suzanne Plachette, God rest her soul, sort of co-directed it with me. I mean, she just, it was my first episode, she just kind of, when I'd block it wrong or do something wrong with Bob, she'd go, no, honey, you don't want him to do that. You want him, bring him over here, bring him here, do this, do that. And so I always give Suzanne Plachette co-credit for my first directing job. But anyway.
I always loved her. She was really, you look back at those shows, she was really good on that.
Oh, she was
the kind of fantasy wife that most guys would like to have. She was like a man's
remember
woman.
the and I did the next Newhart too. The
Newhart too, right?
The Inn,
sure.
The Inn, and I just did the first couple of years of that. But that last episode, that idea was Ginny Newhart's, Bob Newhart's wife's idea to make it a dream. This was all a dream because we always kidded Mary Fran, who's unfortunately gone now too, but anyway, she always wore her fuzzy sweaters and, had certain little idiosyncrasies, and anyway, to have that dream, and none of the audience knew that Suzanne, they crept her in and stuck her in the bed, and then suddenly the lights went on, and the audience just went absolutely nuts. And Bob saying, I had this most incredible dream.
Now, did you direct that show? I should know that. Did you direct the final episode?
I did. I didn't direct that episode, no. Yeah. But I did direct, the Newhart. I directed the first 2 years of Newhart in the Country Inn in Vermont.
Right.
Everybody says, the one with Larry, Darryl, and Darryl.
That's right.
Yeah, they became the sort of go-to.
That running gag lasted longer than probably any other running gag in TV, I would think.
Oh, it was. Yeah. I still get that when somebody said, you did direct the Bob Newhart Show, and I just did a couple of, but I did direct Newhart, and he said, Larry, Darryl, and Darryl. Yeah, everybody remembers that. So, it was fun.
Easy gig for two of those guys. They never spoke.
Yeah, that's
until the
right.
last episode, then I think both the brothers finally said something. But
did they really?
I think they did. Where he gets hit by the golf ball at the end, I think they finally yell or something in the last episode.
I forgot. But they were terrific. All three of them, I can't remember names now, but all three of them were, actually wonderful actors.
I was going to say they're probably Shakespeare-trained actors. That part. Yeah, that was a great part, but they probably trained for Shakespeare all those years, and they didn't think they'd be doing that part.
But they were having a good time doing Newhart.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Well, when you direct an episode of a sitcom, you really only have about 5 days, right, to put a whole thing together?
Yeah, we do it in 5 days. If it's a 4-camera show, which is what mostly I did, Scrubs the last show I did was Scrubs, and that was single camera. That's done like a film.
So without a without an audience.
We shoot all day. Yeah, no audience. It's much harder, but the finished product looks better. I think it's a whole different style of comedy and everything. But that was a lovely show to do. It's just the hours are much harder on that. We were working 12, 13-hour days, and doing a lot of locations, and not just the hospital, but various other locations. And we'd be in there at 6 in the morning, and we wouldn't be done till 7 or 8 at night. And I think I did my last one. I was 72 years old, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. And the show got canceled. So I thought, you know what? It's a good time to cancel myself out on this, too. So, yeah, that was...
Well, that's like shooting a mini movie every week. Yeah, that's a tough schedule.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's like shooting a mini movie. Even though it's only 30 minutes or 24 minutes long, it's still a lot of scenes. And in that show, there were lots of scenes. And it means lots of setups. And, even though we had a wonderful crew and a wonderful cast, and the writing was great, it's still hard work.
Yeah.
Whereas doing Everybody Loves Raymond or Reba or Family Ties was, you start on a Monday, you rehearse a little bit Monday, you rehearse more on Tuesday, you run it, you do it again Wednesday, you run it again, camera block it on Thursday, but you're out of there by at least 5 o'clock every day, and then on Friday, which is your big day, you tape in front of an audience without an audience, so you kind of have it as protection.
Right.
And then you bring an audience in at, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and you do it in front of the audience, and you hopefully just do it once or twice, because they get really tired of seeing the same gags over and over and over, and they stop laughing. So we try to rehearse it enough so that, you just have actors who
do it like a play.
Give it their all and do it once or twice, and you've got it. And you've also got it from the afternoon, too, working that way.
Yeah, I didn't realize you do one without an audience in the afternoon just to get it on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know you
and
did
then
that.
tape it at night.
Right.
By that time, it was taped. Bob Newhart Show, which is years ago, my God, it was, 1975 I was in that. That was film. That was 35-millimeter film,
right.
And no zoom lenses. It was amazing how archaic that was. But in defense of that, it makes you learn to walk before you can run. And if you really know how to do film, then you pick up tape very easily, much more easily. So,
what would it take about for a half-hour show? About an hour to film it, provided no technical problem?
Yeah, I would say more like 2 hours. So
2 hours?
An hour and a half, 2 hours. Yeah, It should be, and so, it all depends on who it is. If it was Raymond, their writing was so superb that, and we had also shot in the afternoon, that if none of the actors went up in their lines, sometimes they'd finish a scene, it would be terrific, and the writers would pick up a couple of more jokes. They would suddenly think of something funnier than was said. So they'd go back and they'd do the scene over, but 4 or 5 jokes had changed. So, bam, they'd do it again, and the audience would like it just as much because the lines changed a lot.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That was probably the last sitcom that had that kind of old school feel to it.
Yeah.
Of the classic, 60s and basically 70s, like Mary Tyler Moore, MTM production kind of sitcom. Even though that wasn't MTM, it had that feel to it.
Right, and Reba did too. Reba still plays all day on the Family Channel or the Country Western Channel or one of those. I mean, and people just like it. People watch it because it's just so sweet and kind of homespun and nice. And Raymond, of course, just plays. The best compliment we all got from Raymond is, "Oh my gosh, I have a grandmother just like that. I have an aunt who drives me. I have a mother-in-law who drives. A husband who's just like Ray." And that was the best compliment you could possibly get. That it just brought your own life home, except that ours was probably a little faster and a little funnier.
Right. There was really nothing dated on that show. I mean, that's going to be running for another 50 years.
Oh yeah,
there's nothing time of the time. I mean, it could run
right.
anytime. Yeah.
Right. I think it'll go for a long time because Phil Rosenthal, who he and Ray Romano created it together, and Phil was the head writer and the boss, and he would start the story meetings on Monday with, okay, how was everybody's weekend? And he wanted to know stories. He wanted to, what happened to you? What happened to you, so-and-so, on the weekend? And if somebody had something wild that happened, I mean, so many of those stories that we did were true. Yeah. True stories. I can't remember right now specifically, but you remember they got the Fruit of the Month?
Fruit of the Month. The mother hated the Fruit of the Month, right?
Yeah, right. Well, that happened to him. That was Phil and his wife. Phil gave that to his father and mother, and they hated it. and that came from a real story. I mean, so many of those stories were real stories the writers had heard about from friends.
Well, the suitcase one, the suitcase on the stairway, that happened.
Right.
One of them, I don't know, I remember hearing an interview, but that was one of the classics. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, there were a lot of classics on that one.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a great series.
Yeah. Can you watch a sitcom now, even though there really aren't any like that anymore? There's a few without critically, or can you enjoy it?
I don't. I don't watch it. My wife has a couple of hour shows that she loves, and I watch with her. Elementary, she likes, and our son is an actor, and he's got a part coming up on Logan.
Great.
Get Shorty, and we've been watching Get Shorty. Ray Romano's on that,
Right.
And that's a series. I can't remember the other actor's name. The Irish actor is with him on that, and that's a terrific series. And Better Call Saul, we love.
It's a good show. I watch
we love Breaking Bad and stuff like that. But no, I watch basketball and news. That's my big thing. I watch the Clippers, God bless them, and I love the news. I watch a lot of news, and I don't watch sitcoms much anymore. I guess it's because I had my fill of them, and I admire Jimmy Burrows is still my hero. He helped me get started, and by God, he's still he's the king of our business. I think he's still back directing Will and Grace that he did 20 years ago.
Okay, I don't know what show he was.
Yeah, he did Taxi, and he did Mary Tyler Moore, and he let me observe with him. He's Abe Burrows' son, and I knew him in New York as a stage manager. He was a stage manager for some Broadway shows, and when I got to California and I started wanting to direct, he said, "Well, come on, hang out with me and watch," and which he's done to so many starting up directors, and he's still doing it. But he's a couple of years younger than I think he's in his mid to late 70s now, but he's still going.
Just a kid.
If you like it, keep doing it. That's what I say. Yeah. I just got too tired. My family life was taking over, and we're now up to 6 grandchildren, and that's a big thing in my life right now.
Well, there's really no sitcom. They're all doing reboots now. You mentioned Will and Grace. Murphy Brown is coming back, and
they're bringing Roseanne back without Roseanne.
Yeah, that didn't work out too well. But they're bringing the family back. But
I can't wait to see.
Running out of ideas.
I love those. I've worked with all those actors, and they're just wonderful, good actors.
Yeah.
But if they don't have Roseanne, you just wonder what's that going to be. I produced a television. I directed a pilot that Roseanne produced for her then husband Tom Arnold.
Tom, yeah.
That was an experience. But I don't
know, maybe you're a friend of his, but I don't get it with him.
No, but he's a really nice guy.
I'm sure he is.
And he was very nice, but it was part of her deal.
Yeah.
She'd come back to do another year if they'd give her husband a pilot. And so they said, sure. So they're about to make it, and suddenly we're getting divorced. But she still wanted to do the pilot, and he wanted to do the pilot. So we did the pilot, and that was an experience.
Yeah, I guess they're not friendly now. I've seen some things he's said about her, so they're not friendly now either.
No.
But it seems like they just don't have a new idea. I think Frasier. I heard that Kelsey Grammer maybe come back in a Frasier reboot. So
no kidding. Well.
I don't know. I think the problem is nobody knows how to write the sitcom anymore.
I know. Isn't that funny? Are there huge new hits that have been running and running? I don't even follow.
I don't really watch much either. to tell you the
Yeah.
truth. I'm like you, sports and some stuff
Yep.
on Netflix, some of those kind of shows. But other
Yeah.
than that, it's kind of a shame. But it also brings back, like you said, you can watch Bob Newhart, you can watch Mary Tyler Moore if you want. You can find it.
Yeah.
Those are classics.
And that's the thing. The business is so completely different now with Netflix and Amazon that the other night it was true. We wanted to see, I can't remember what it was, but we'd missed a couple of episodes of something, and bam, we just found them on Netflix.
Yeah.
And we're able to stream and see a couple hours or 2 or 3 hours of 3 or 4 shows that you could never do that before.
No, yeah, everything's on demand now, so that's a good thing.
Oh, my gosh. And the thing that kills me, and I'm glad I'm not directing, is so many of my grandchildren now will watch something on their iPhone. And,
right.
Of course, it was never meant to be seen on a screen that's 2x4 or whatever it is. And, oh, Poppy, I saw your name on Everybody Loves Raymond. I saw it on my iPhone on a rerun. And I went, oh, no. I'd rather have you see it on a big television set or a 45-inch television or something. But this is the new generation.
Yeah.
You can't fight it, that's for sure.
Now, as a director, not to be too personal, but do you get residuals as a director on these shows?
I do.
Oh,
yep.
That's good
yep.
then. So you get your
That's
little retirement money.
Very
That's
public
good.
knowledge. No, I'm very lucky. It's been wonderful, and the some of the shows that Family Ties still plays a lot, and Scrubs does, and especially Reba and Everybody Loves Raymond. So
right.
I was just really lucky that I got onto some shows that, for some reason or another, you never know why. I know I got on the Reba show because a friend of mine was playing opposite her, the lead opposite her, said she's tried all these other directors the first year and she doesn't like anybody, and she'd like an older man. And at the time I was about 65, I guess. And I went in and met her, and I didn't know her. I only knew her work as a country singer. I didn't know her as an actor or anything. And I just fell in love with her. I just she and Christine Baranski are my 2 favorite actors in the world. I think they just are. They're such rock solid people as people, as humans, and they work so hard. They come in, they are prepared, and so we just hit it off. And she liked having somebody older, and I was quick and efficient, and I got her sense of humor, and she has a great sense of humor. And so it was one of those things that I lasted 5 years on that before finally they could cancel it. But it's all the luck of the draw, the chemistry. It's all chemistry, I think. You get along with certain writers. The head writer you get along with well, and the actors. The main job of the director is making sure the actors understand their script. They really are happy with their script. And if they're not, then you have to go to the writers and kind of say, Reba is your star, Phil Romano is your star, Ray Romano is your star. He's not too happy right now. But they're sometimes embarrassed to come to the writer themselves. So the director is sort of a liaison between the two.
Oh, that's interesting.
And and you always, Gary Goldberg, who created Family Ties and many other shows, always said, be sure you're on the side of the actor. Don't ever side with us writers, because he said you'll get buried. You've got to be a champion of the actor.
Yeah.
And if you feel the line isn't right, and the actor feels the line isn't right, we'll make it work. We'll change it. We'll change it so they're happy. And it's true. Usually, if a really good actor can't learn a line, keeps going up in his line, and it's a good actor, like a Kelsey Grammer or somebody like that, then the chances are it's the line. It's not the actor. Yeah. It's the line that needs to be changed. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. That's my feeling, anyway.
Yeah. Have you ever done any teaching of directing, or do you do anything?
I haven't. I guest teach. A friend of mine teaches at UCLA, and I go in and conduct a session with her 2 or 3 times a year. And another friend of mine taught writing for actors writing class, actually, and I've gone in and taught there. And I've mentored in the last few years, actually, I've mentored 2 or 3 directors that have actually become very busy and quite successful and really nice. And one guy took over Scrubs after I left, started doing a few Scrubs, and then he did another series for Bill Lawrence after that, the producer. And he's doing features now. And my friend Valerie observed with me a lot, and I helped her out. And she's doing a lot of these hour shows, these How to Get Away with Murder, that kind of. She works for Shonda Rhimes a lot and stuff. So I get a kick out of that kind of thing, you know.
That's great.
And my granddaughter
just
has
talking to you tonight. You have that way about you.
That what?
I was just saying, just talking to you tonight, you have that way about you. You should be teaching it, but you are, so that's good.
I don't know. I don't know if I had the patience to teach. You know, somebody said I worked with so many wonderful actors. You know, I did Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks, which was one of his first jobs. And I did the first 2 years of that. And Peter Scolari and Tom Hanks were wonderful. And Bruce Willis was great on Moonlighting, and Michael J. Fox on. You know, I've worked with so many wonderful actors that I don't know whether I'm spoiled. And that was always my excuse. I'm not sure I have the patience to deal with people who are learning. And that's not a good thing for teachers, obviously, to be. You shouldn't feel that way, but that was at the time, and I kind of wish I had gone out and taught, and I didn't. But hey, I'm doing it in other ways.
Well, just talking to you tonight, this will be up on YouTube, so people will listen to this and get some good insight.
Oh, great!
Like
okay.
I have. I didn't know a lot of these things you were telling me.
So do I go to that website that you?
It'll be up there a little bit later on, right after we get off. I'll send you a link to the email later.
Okay.
So we'll do that.
Please do.
But before we wrap up, you and I were just mentioning I had a chance to talk to Bob Newhart when he came down here to do a show. Do you ever keep in touch with him or how he's doing?
Well, no. I mean, unfortunately, the last time I saw Bob, quite honestly, was at Marcia Wallace's memorial service, and he spoke, and oh my God, he was fantastic. He was hysterically funny and very touching. He adored her, and she adored him. And Jim Brooks spoke, who was also very funny because she'd done The Simpsons a lot. But Bob just knocked it out of the park. It was a lovely occasion. It was not in a church or anything. It was at a country club or something like that. We all had a wonderful dinner and a couple of drinks, and Bob just got up, and he was Bob. And he's a unique individual.
Yeah.
But I hear he's going strong. He does what he wants. He's 83 or 4, and he does Big Bang Theory occasionally.
That's right. He does a guest shot. He does a few shows a year around the country once in a while.
Yeah.
That's great.
You know, he lost Don Nichols. That was his buddy who came around the set a lot. But I think Bob is going to be probably like Rickles. He's probably going to go out with his boots on. He's a good Catholic husband. I think he has 5 kids, and he's still married to the same wonderful woman. And but he still likes to get up in front of an audience and perform once in a while. And God knows he doesn't have to do that. But he likes it.
Yeah,
he likes it.
And one of those comedians like a Bob Hope or Jack Benny, always clean but always funny. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, never wavered from that, which was good.
And some of those things that he came up with himself, those records. I grew up
Button-Down
on.
Mind.
I mean,
I had that. Yeah, sure.
The Button-Down Mind, him talking about Sir Walter Raleigh and discovering this tobacco, and the bus driver, because we'd lived in New York for years, and how those buses would always shut just as you were getting onto them, and the way they actually taught that in a school. You know, the whole idea was so ridiculous, but yet so real. He was able to combine that reality with an absurdity that was
a one-sided conversation. He was the master.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And what you're hearing on the other end, which is so surprising.
Just quickly before we wrap up, you mentioned Marcia Wallace. I always thought she was underrated as a comedy actress. She was so good on the Newhart Show, and then you said she did some stuff on The Simpsons. I don't think people kind of give her the credit she was due, though. I don't know if you agree with
I
that
agree.
or not.
I'm so pleased to hear you say that, Doug. She was one of my favorite people. I knew her as a young actress in New York years ago when I was first dating my wife Patsy, and Marcia shared an apartment with a couple of friends, and Wally Harper, who was the pianist for Barbara Cook, and Marcia was there, and this is long before she came to California. So I kind of followed her career, and we actually directed Marcia in a television pilot before the Bob Newhart Show, actually. And she no, I'm getting my time wrong. I did it after the Bob Newhart Show was over. But just to see her, get on that and then work on The Simpsons was great. And she finally got married to the man she loved and then lost him, but she had a wonderful son. And he's still going strong. He's an actor out here. I've seen him in a couple of shows, equity waiver shows, and I think he's done some television too. So he survived both of his parents.
That's right.
So anyway, no, she was a loving.
She had a comedic look
lady
about her. She could do funny faces. And great delivery.
She had a great way with a line. I mean, she just she knew how to be able to say a line and give you that look. Do you remember
give it to Jerry on the show and give it to Bob? I mean, she held her own in that little center circle there, on the Newhart
He sure did. He sure did.
Well, Mackenzie, I know we kept you longer than we said, but you had some great stories. But I appreciate you taking the time, and let's do it again down the road.
Says, when you ask those kind of questions, I sure can talk.
No,
so,
we love
anyway,
this kind of thing. You don't.
Well, thanks for listening, Doug, and I appreciate your calling. That was very kind of you.
Great. We'll talk to you soon, Will, and I'll send you a link to this. But we'll give our best to your wife, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thanks so much. Bye, Doug. Bye-bye.